My sister got fired again. Try being a janitor, Elena. That job suits you better. The wine glass in Samantha's hand caught the chandelier light just as her voice pierced through the laughter of the Carter family party. My father chuckled without looking at me and added, "At least you can't get fired from that." The room erupted. I stood still, my hands cold around the untouched glass I brought. They thought I was done. That 3 mysterious firings meant I was incompetent, unlucky, irrelevant. But they didn't know what I had found. Not yet. So I smiled, walked up to the mic, and when I spoke, the air shifted. Laughter stopped mid-breath. My sister's face froze. My father's mouth hung half open. Because the truth I carried wasn't just a response. It was a detonation. Growing up in the Carter household meant one thing. My sister, Samantha, always came first. She was the daughter with the perfect piano recital at age 7, the beauty pageant crown at 10, and the Ivy League acceptance letter framed on the hallway wall by 17. At every dinner table, her stories were centerpieces. Her successes were broadcast like breaking news. Me? I was the bright but difficult one, the backup child. When I was accepted into Boston University with a merit scholarship in finance, my father said, "That's decent, I suppose," before switching the topic to Samantha's internship at Goldman. When I landed my first job at a boutique investment firm, no one toasted. But when Samantha got promoted at hers, they bought champagne. I used to think maybe I just needed to try harder, so I did. I worked twice as long, said yes to overtime, took certifications, climbed slowly, carefully. I didn't need to outshine Samantha. I just wanted to be respected. Or at least, seen. But the gap never closed. When Mom passed away from lymphoma, the rift only widened. She had been the only person who spoke to me, as if my voice mattered. Her death was quiet. Samantha flew in for 12 hours, cried once, posed for a family picture in front of the casket, and left before sunrise. My father already half a ghost, since Mom's diagnosis retreated entirely into Samantha's world after that. I was 28 when I was fired for the first time. No clear reason, just downsizing. Then came the second. Different firm, different state, same eerie silence before the cut. I began to wonder, was I cursed? Was I really not good enough? But something inside me, stubborn, defiant, refused to believe that the world's most volatile job market just happened to collapse beneath me 3 times. So I kept quiet, moved back to Boston, and tried again. I rented a small walk-up near Beacon Hill and started freelancing as a consultant for a startup portfolio. It paid less, sure, but it gave me time to think, and slowly, things didn't seem random anymore. There were whispers in exit interviews, odd emails from HR, even one anonymous message in my junk inbox. "She made sure you were out, just saying." She. I didn't know it for certain then, but deep down, I knew who they meant. Because when Samantha smiled, she never smiled with her eyes, and I had seen that smirk too many times when I stumbled. Still, I said nothing. Until the night she toasted with a grin and mocked my career in front of 60 people. That night, I decided I wouldn't just defend myself. I would end her masquerade on her own stage. The day after Samantha's toast, I couldn't sleep. Her words clung to my skin like grease that wouldn't wash off. I replayed the moment over and over, the clinking glasses, the chorus of laughter, the hollow silence that followed when I didn't laugh with them. But beneath the sting, something was shifting. I stopped asking why it hurt. Instead, I began asking why it kept happening. So I pulled out my old laptop, the one I'd nearly retired after my second firing, and began to piece things together. 3 firms. 3 firings. All similar. No warning, vague language, and the same type of HR phrasing: conflict of interest, client discomfort, reputation risk. Reputation risk? That phrase sent me down a rabbit hole. I searched my old work emails. Yes, I still had backup copies. Scanned every HR thread. In one thread from Lexington Financial, a particular forwarded email caught my eye. It had been forwarded to HR from a Confidential concern inbox, flagged as sensitive, but it didn't include the original sender. Then, at Mason Reed Capital, the language was eerily familiar. Following recent concerns, we have no choice but to end this relationship in alignment with our risk policies. Again, no specific accusation. Just a shadow of something. I sat back, heart pounding. Two firms with no connection had used nearly identical phrasing. Was that a coincidence? No. It felt scripted. That's when I called Lindsay. She was my college roommate turned cybersecurity specialist, quirky, brilliant, and fiercely loyal. I hadn't spoken to her in months, but I knew if anyone could help me trace something buried, it was her. She answered on the second ring. Elena, oh my Gadar, you alive? Barely, I laughed, but it wasn't a joke. Lindsay, I need a favor, a big one. An hour later, I was at her apartment, sitting across from a jungle of monitors while she typed like a storm. I gave her the info, the dates I was fired, the company names, the emails I had saved. I also gave her one more thing, Samantha's company domain. Just a hunch, I said. She raised an eyebrow. You think your sister was involved? I think someone wanted me out of the industry, and I think she benefited every single time I was removed. Lindsay nodded slowly. Okay, I'll dig. But this might take a few days. Do whatever you need. I just need to know. As I walked back to my apartment that night, I felt a kind of dread I hadn't known before. What if I was right? What if my own sister, the person who smiled at me in family photos, who hugged me on birthdays, was the one quietly burning down every piece of my career? But dread wasn't the only thing I felt. There was also a rising flame of clarity. Because if she was the one who tried to bury me, I was going to make damn sure she'd regret not digging deeper. 3 days later, Lindsay texted me at 1:14 a.m. You awake? I was. Insomnia had become a ritual since the party. I replied immediately, and a minute later my phone lit up with her FaceTime call. She didn't waste time. Elena, she said, her tone lower, eyes serious. I think you're right, and I think this goes deeper than I thought. She shared her screen. I squinted to understand the lines of email headers, metadata charts, and domain logs until she zoomed in on one name. S. Carter at avenkacapital.com. Samantha's work email. What am I looking at? I asked, my voice flat. She sent emails from her work domain to your former companies. They were masked through an anonymous complaint submission system. But the fingerprints are there, the timestamps, the routing paths, the IP shadow she used matches her office. I stared at the screen. So she really... Lindsay nodded. She reported you to your employers. All three. Different allegations. All vague but serious enough. Client discomfort, document mismanagement, potential information breach. She accused me of leaking data? I choked. Lindsay shrugged. Not directly. Just enough to raise red flags. They wouldn't risk keeping someone with even a whiff of scandal in this industry. It's classic corporate sabotage. I sank into the couch. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I had suspected her. I had followed a hunch. But seeing it confirmed in black and white, it was something else. It wasn't just betrayal. It was premeditated character assassination. And worse, it worked. What kind of person does this to their own sister? I whispered. Lindsay hesitated. Someone who sees you as competition. Or worse, as a threat. I thought back to every boardroom we had ever accidentally shared. Every client event where she smirked when I spoke. Maybe I should have known. Maybe Mom had, too, before she got sick. I can gather more, Lindsay said, breaking the silence. If I can access her actual work laptop or her cloud sync folder, I might find drafts, messages, planning threads, the kind of evidence you could bring to court, or the media. My chest tightened. That might mean going to her place. Lindsay nodded. You'd need a reason to be in her apartment. Or her office. And you'd need to be fast. For a long moment, I just stared at the dark screen. Samantha had played her hand in secret for years. She had carefully placed every knife But now, the game was shifting. and I wasn't going to play by her rules anymore. The invitation came on expensive linen paper, like it was supposed to soften the insult. Celebrating Samantha Carter, appointed Chief Investment Officer of Avenka Capital. Underneath in script, family only. I almost tore it in half, but instead I pinned it to the fridge. I needed the reminder. My father called 2 days later. His voice carried the same indifference it always had when addressing me. "You'll be there, right? It's an important night for your sister." I wanted to ask if I was ever going to have one of those important nights, but instead, I said, "I'll come." I didn't come for Samantha. Or my father. I came to watch them squirm, and they just didn't know it yet. The party was held in a private event hall at the top of the Lyra Hotel in downtown Boston. Everything about it reeked of curated, prestigious string quartet, champagne pyramids, and fake laughter bouncing off marble floors. I arrived in a navy sheath dress, minimal makeup, no date, just me, the invitation, and a tiny silver USB drive tucked into my clutch. Samantha looked radiant. Of course she did. Her dress shimmered like starlight, her smile flashed with practiced ease, and her laugh floated through the room like a song she had mastered. When she spotted me, her smile faltered, but only for a breath. "Elena," she said, kissing the air near my cheek. "Glad you could make it." "Wouldn't miss it," I replied. "You look surprisingly rested." "I sleep very well these days," I said, meeting her gaze. "Guilt doesn't keep me up." That earned the smallest flicker in her eyes. Then she drifted away toward her admirers. An hour in, the toasts began. My father stood first, glass raised. "To my brilliant daughter, the pride of the Carter name. A leader, a trailblazer, and the kind of woman who doesn't let anyone drag her down." Everyone clapped. I didn't. Then Samantha took the mic and smiled directly at me. "Before I pass this mic on, I want to thank you all for being here and for enduring all of our little Carter dramas over the years. You've seen me through a lot. Promotions, long nights, and a sister who, well," she chuckled. "Who got fired? Again, maybe 3 times? I've lost count. Elena, sweetie, maybe try being a janitor? That job suits you better. At least there, nobody expects you to deliver quarterly reports." Laughter. Then our father leaned toward the mic and added, "Well, she wouldn't get fired from that, so maybe it's a win." More laughter. Louder. I looked around at faces I'd known since childhood, neighbors, distant relatives, old friends of my parents laughing at me like I was some sitcom character on the losing end of a punchline. But what they didn't know was this. I came prepared. And tonight, I wasn't walking away wounded. I was stepping up to finish what my sister started. So, as the clapping died down, I walked slowly, deliberately toward the stage. "Mind if I say a few words?" I asked, already reaching for the mic. Samantha looked startled. My father opened his mouth, but no words came out. "Thank you," I said, turning toward the room. "I do have something to say, and it won't take long." But what followed would stay with them far longer than any toast. 2 weeks before the party, while the world thought I was spiraling from another job loss, I was actually planning my quiet war. Lindsay and I had mapped out everything. Samantha's laptop was known to sync regularly with her cloud storage. Avenka Capital had strict data retention policies. But Lindsay discovered that Samantha kept unencrypted work files on a local folder on her personal laptop, likely because she thought it was more efficient. Arrogance has a habit of skipping over basic security hygiene. We just needed access. And I knew exactly when. 3 days before the party, Samantha posted a photo on her Instagram story. A spa retreat in the Berkshires, captioned, "Deserved." Perfect. I waited until 11:30 p.m., then drove to her condone upscale unit overlooking the Charles River. I still had her spare key. She gave it to me 6 years ago when she went on a yoga retreat and forgot to cancel her Blue Apron subscription. I never gave it back. The building had a doorman, but he was dozing behind his desk. I walked in like I belonged, took the elevator to the 12th floor, and let myself into her place. Everything was spotless. Too spotless. The kind of curated minimalism that screamed display, not home. Her laptop sat on the marble counter, plugged in, charging. I whispered a silent thank you to Samantha's vanity. I plugged in Lindsay's USB custom-coded to scan for document threads, email drafts, deleted files, cache trails, and cloud logs. The screen lit up with folder after folder, and soon, keywords popped up on Lindsay's interface back at her apartment. Elena Carter, 17 hits. Reputation risk, 6 hits. Anonymous HR, 3 draft emails. Avenka conflict referral, 1 master file. I clicked open one of the drafts. We're concerned about Ms. Carter's pattern of behavior with sensitive clients. She tends to overshare strategy details. Another read. We advise caution around Ms. Carter's reliability. There have been past ethical concerns. The language was precise and vague enough to escape liability, but potent enough to poison a reputation. She had signed none of them, but they were written, saved, edited on her machine. And then I found the kicker. A timeline spreadsheet with my employment history, color, coded by firm. At the top, in bold. If she resurfaces here, deploy suggestion memo. 2. Memo. Suggestion. Deploy. Like I was a pest to be managed. I copied everything. Every email, every draft, every version. The USB light blinked green, transfer complete. I wiped traces, ejected the drive, and placed her laptop exactly where I found it. Before I left, I looked around her apartment one last time. The framed articles, the self-help books with untouched spines, the untouched fruit bowl. Her life looked so perfect on the outside. But now I had the files that proved what it was built on: manipulation, sabotage, and control. When I stepped outside into the cold night air, I didn't shiver. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't just surviving, I was preparing to strike. I took the mic with steady hands. Thank you for the warm words tonight, I began, letting my voice carry. It's true, I've been fired, not once, but 3 times, and it's been humiliating, painful, and, for a while, confusing. I let that settle. People shifted uncomfortably. Some gave sympathetic glances. Others smirked, unsure where this was going. But tonight, I continued, I'd like to tell you what actually happened. Not the version built on gossip and half smiles. The truth. Samantha tensed. Her wine glass paused mid-air. You see, I said, pulling a small folder from my clutch, I've spent the last few weeks doing what any curious, desperate woman would do, digging. I turned to the crowd. And I discovered something remarkable, that all 3 of my firings weren't random. They were planned, engineered. Gasps. A few awkward chuckles. My father cleared his throat. Samantha's eyes narrowed. I opened the folder. Emails, drafts, timelines, even code, named attack memos, all saved Slupalion, a personal laptop. I turned to my sister. Samantha, you may want to sit down for this part. She didn't move. I held up a printed copy. Here's one. If she resurfaces here, deploy suggestion memo. 2. Your words, not HR's, yours. A low murmur swept across the room like a wave pulling back before a crash. Samantha stepped forward, trying to play calm. Elena, I don't know what you think you've found, but this is not the time. It wasn't the time when you wrote anonymous complaints to my firms either, was it? I cut in, my voice sharpening. Or when you called me a janitor in front of this entire room. The room quieted. Even the music stopped. I looked around. You all laughed. My own father laughed. And maybe that would have been the end of it. Another humiliation. But I didn't come here to be pitied. I came here to end a story you've all believed for too long. I held up a USB. This contains every file, every fake complaint, every draft, every timestamp. And it's already been sent to Avenka Capital's ethics board, also to 3 reporters and 2 legal teams. Now, Samantha's face drained of all color. Don't worry, I didn't break the law. But you? You might want to check your inbox Monday morning. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I turned to my father. You always said I was dramatic. Difficult. Maybe I was. But I never lied. I never destroyed anyone's life to get ahead. His face had turned to stone. He didn't speak. I finished with a deep breath. Maybe I'll never be the favorite. Maybe I'll always be the one in the corner. But at least I can say this. I earned everything I ever had. And when someone tried to take it from me, I didn't roll over. I fought back. I placed the mic gently on the table. Then, I walked out. No applause, no music. Just silence, stunned, raw, and echoing. And behind me, the sound of a glass dropping to the floor. The morning after the party, I woke up to 43 unread messages. The first few were from distant cousins and former colleagues. I had no idea. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen. Samantha looked like she'd seen a ghost. Then came the ones from people I didn't expect. A former manager from Crossbridge Capital. I owe you an apology. You were one of the sharpest minds we had. A recruiter I hadn't heard from in years. If you're open to consulting again, we'd love to talk. Even one from an HR rep at Venka Capital short, cold, but unmistakable. We are launching an internal ethics investigation. You may be contacted. I didn't respond to any of them. Not yet. Instead, I went for a walk along the Charles River. The sun was just rising, casting gold over the water. The air felt cleaner somehow, like the weight that had clung to my chest for years had finally cracked loose. Then my phone buzzed again. Dad. I hesitated. I stared at his name for a full minute before silencing the call. He texted immediately after. We need to talk. You blindsided us. Us. Not her. Us. Even now, when the proof was printed and broadcast and undeniable, I was still the problem in his eyes. I didn't reply. By noon, the news had spread. A leak from inside Venka confirmed that an internal audit had begun, and Samantha had been placed on administrative leave pending review of ethics complaints and professional misconduct. LinkedIn was ablaze. Finance Twitter devoured the story. Someone posted a blurry photo of me leaving the party. Caption: Elena Carter just pulled off the most elegant takedown in finance party history. I didn't feel elegant. I felt exhausted. That evening, Lindsay came over with sushi, beer, and a sly grin. So, you torched a queen bee in her hive, she said, raising her chopsticks. How's it feel? I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. Strange, I admitted. It wasn't revenge. Not really. I didn't want to ruin her. I just wanted her to stop ruining me. Lindsay nodded. And now? I want peace, I said quietly. I want space where I don't have to prove I deserve to be in the room. She clinked her beer can against mine. Then let this be your first toast in a long time, one without mockery. We ate in silence after that, the kind of silence only earned by people who have walked through fire together. I checked my inbox once more before bed. One email caught my eye different from the others. Subject: Your story matters. Let's talk. It was from a woman named Dr. Elaine Morgan, director of a new program at MIT, Women in Finance Leadership Initiative. She'd read about the fallout. She wanted me to speak. Not as a victim, but as a voice. 2 weeks later, I stood at a podium in a glass-walled conference room at MIT, facing an audience of young women with notebooks, laptops, and bright, unjaded eyes. I wasn't there as someone's sister, not the failure, not the girl who got fired. I was Elena Carter. I told them about my journey, not just the sabotage and humiliation, but the loneliness, the quiet shame, the ache of never being enough in a room filled with people who shared your last name. I didn't cry. I didn't dramatize. I told the truth plain, sharp, and steady. When I finished, they didn't clap politely. They stood. Afterward, a student approached me, trembling slightly. She wore an oversized blazer and had a binder stuffed with printed resumes. I'm scared, she admitted. Scared I'm too small to survive in rooms like this. I looked her in the eye. Then make your own room, I said softly. and when you do leave the door open for others. That night, walking back through Cambridge in the autumn chill, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Peace. Not because I'd burned bridges, but because I'd finally stopped building them just to be allowed to cross. I had created a new path on my terms. Samantha's name still trended online for weeks. Investigations continued. My father never called again. And strangely, that didn't hurt anymore. Because silence, I realized, can be the beginning of clarity. Months later, I moved to Portland, Maine, little house by the harbor, where mornings smelled like salt and possibility. I took on remote consulting again, this time choosing who I worked with, when and why. No more proving, no more begging. Just building. One day at a time. Sometimes, I still think about that party. About the way they laughed. And how, with one mic and one truth, I turned their laughter into silence. Not out of spite, but out of strength. Because the most dangerous woman in any room is the one they tried to humiliate and couldn't break.